Welcome, everyone, to another amazing episode of Underdog Leadership Podcast. And this is a special one because it is the end of our second season. And if you will remember, the theme of this season was rebellion. And so hopefully my guest today and I can have sort of a reflection on rebellion and an introduction to a really refreshing way of talking about marketing and personal branding. So please meet Kendra Corman. She's been in marketing and advertising for more than, 15 years. She was the only woman in the room for many of those years, which I can completely relate to. Once she became more confident in herself and her skills, she moved up the ladder and eventually struck out on her own, from Jeep to insurance to helping entrepreneurs do better and more effective marketing. She has definitely had an interesting journey. And Kendra Corman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, my pleasure, Kendra. So it's funny, when we started sort of brainstorming about this session, you immediately jumped on the concept of personal branding. And I have to say, as a marketing expert, as yourself, I was surprised. Tell me the connection between personal branding and marketing.
So everything in marketing is relationship driven. You're building relationships with your donors, with your target audience. I don't care if you're a solopreneur that's in a high touch service business or if you're working at a Fortune 50 company. Everything you do is based on relationships. People buy what they want, not what they need, right? And so if you have a relationship with people, everything is so much easier.
Right.
So, for instance, if you think about nonprofit events, we were talking about this before we started recording, you will get more attendees if more people reach out and do personal invites to their network.
Yes. Wait, you need to repeat that. Say that again, Kendra.
You will have more attendees if people do personal invites to their network. It all comes out to that personal connection, that relationship, that personal outreach. Always, it trumps anything and everything in marketing. Marketing is personal and personalized. It's why I'm a fan of email marketing that we've talked about before. And it really, if you set the relationship up,
right,
and people know, like, and trust you, they're more likely to donate to you, buy from you, refer you, whatever it happens to be, because that makes a difference in their minds. And it really ultimately all comes down to relationships. And your personal brand drives a lot of your relationships. If you're not authentic and you're fake, people can see right through it.
Interesting. So many of us think of marketing as the driver for success, right? The spit stuff out into the universe and they'll buy the ticket, or spit stuff into the universe and they buy the purse or the jacket or whatever. What you're suggesting is that they have a relationship with someone that they trust, know, and like, that already has them predetermined or predisposed, and then the marketing really is a gentle touch point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, marketing is about keeping you top of mind.
Okay.
And yes, it can, for whether or not you feel like a Snickers or a Hershey bar or something like that. Yes, there's an impulse buy part of it at some point, but it's because it's in front of you, right? So marketing is really about that top of mind awareness and keeping you top of mind. But the purchase, especially on things that are higher ticket items, I would say, it's going to come down to relationship. Do I want to work with you? Do I like working with you? Do I like having a conversation with you? I have every other week meetings with my clients. When I do my digital courses, I have twice a week Q&As. If you don't like hearing my voice and you don't like who I am, you don't want to work with me, And so that relationship is really what drives the sale ultimately.
I think my people will be very encouraged because I think of Underdog Leadership people as relationship first people. And that partnership between marketing and personal relationships, I think will really resonate. Can you back us up a little bit? There was something in your bio that I was really curious about, and you're kind of a great example of Tell me about when you were first starting out. I imagine, Kendra, coming to this point, this place in 2023, it wasn't just a snip of the fingers. Where were you, and how did you come to some of these realizations about personal brand in particular?
So for me, it was, so I started off in Chrysler. Actually, it was Daimler Chrysler at the time. They've changed management or ownership a few times, right? Now it's Stellantis, I think. So, but I started out at Chrysler. I started out in the call center and worked my way up. I met a director inside sales and marketing at one point, and he said, "Oh, you should come work for me." And it was like an offhanded comment at an event. And so I sent him an email the next workday, and I said, "Hi, this is Kendra. I'd love to come work for you," because he invited me, right? And here I am, young and hungry and willing to do anything. So I sent the email.
Yep,
and
totally.
I said, "Okay, I don't have any openings right now, but I do have I will have an informational interview." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And so I went and asked Jeeves, because there wasn't Google yet, really. And I went and asked Jeeves what an informational interview was, and I had to do a lot of research on it, but went out and found that by doing informational interviews, volunteering for our women's forum at Chrysler, things like that, built a brand for myself that executives actually saw, remembered me, and when positions opened up, suggested me for those jobs. I was the youngest person in marketing, let alone female, at the time, and I was the SRT marketing manager and worked my way up to the Jeep advertising manager, and then went off on my own to work in insurance and was the marketing director at Kaufman Financial Group. Well, it was Burns & Wilcox at the time. And I really worked on making a name for myself, someone that would do what it took to get the job done, and had a belief in branding and consistent branding. My volunteer work actually got me my job in marketing, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's funny how we started out about relationships and how you built your brand from the inside out, and you valued those relationships inside the corporation.
Yeah,
you really
that I got inside Chrysler was all from informational interviews because I kept myself top of mind with people. Those one-on-one meetings, they are so powerful because I had a one-on-one with HR, and I remember him saying, he's like, "So who else are you meeting with?" And I was like, "Well, I rotate through people, just to keep myself out there." And he's like, "You need to make this one more important." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "They have a position. You need to prioritize this one." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I prioritized that meeting. And the person I had the one-on-one with walked me down the hall and introduced me to the person with the open position. Keeping yourself top of mind, being consistent, having one-on-one meetings, building relationships, even through social media. Direct messages work for a reason. You create these relationships that are so powerful and drive results.
It's like you've got these people working on your team for you. They're great. They're advocating for you.
Yeah, because I'd proven that I could get the job done, right? And I was willing to do what it took to get the job done. So there wasn't a question of whether or not I was qualified, but there were a lot of other people that were qualified going for the same positions I was.
Yeah, I can only imagine in that sort of, particularly car marketing. I can't think of a more hotbed of competitiveness. And now, how did you, in that milieu, tell me a little bit about confidence. Tell me a little bit about how you believed in yourself and had that confidence to keep putting your foot forward.
So when I was the SRT marketing manager, I was put into the position above a lot of people with a lot more experience. Again, I was the youngest person in marketing, let alone female. I wanted to prove myself and prove that I belonged there. Everybody thought that I had extremely high self-confidence, when here I am sitting there going, do I really belong here? Did they make the right decision? I'm trying to help everybody and do everything and make an impact. And found through some coaching that I was doing the wrong thing because everybody took it as I was trying to step on their toes. And it was horrible. I mean, I was actually like really upset because I was just trying to help and prove that I belonged. But they thought I was trying to take stuff away from them. And what I realized was I just have to be who I am and know that I can do a good job and not try to prove myself. My
So
work
there's a
speaks
piece
for itself.
Yeah. So I want to pick up on that idea of wanting in the pursuit of helping and being helpful, which is a typical number 2 trait. You're actually, perceiving it as you taking away their sovereignty or not allowing them to do their jobs. And you're not a nuisance. You're more of a distraction or an annoyance. Is that right?
Yeah. And they felt that I was undermining them. And I wasn't. I was just trying to get it so that they would believe that I belonged there. They already believed I belonged there because I had.
So how did you get yourself to believe that you belonged there?
So I think I struggle with that every day still, because it's not as easy as we would think, right? I attended a presentation from a woman. Her name's Dr. Pat Heim, and she did a lot of study on women in the workplace and women in research on women in storybooks and things like that, and our roles and how we're brought up. And she had a book that she came out with a long, long time ago called Hardball for Women, and it was a really interesting book. But what the issue was is that since nobody wins at dolls, right? You go over to someone's house, you play dolls. Nobody wins, right? Boys are raised to win and lose. And so as women, we're not as comfortable winning, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's harder for us to be in that position. She also said that like all women want to be on the same level. Doesn't matter.
Collaborative.
You can be a vice president, an administrative assistant, whatever it happens to be. Level doesn't matter. We need to feel as women that we're on the same level. If we feel like someone is winning, not to worry, we will all take her down. And that was like the whole story behind it. And that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And so I know that I have the experience and the knowledge to do what I do and to do it well, but I have to remind myself. And before I go into a difficult conversation or a difficult meeting, or one, if I'm starting to feel a little bit anxious as to, okay, can I do this? Am I,
right?
If I start questioning myself, I take a minute out and do a breathing exercise, center myself before that meeting, because I know I can do it. I know that I'm not biting off more than I can chew. I can achieve anything I want. But sometimes I don't necessarily believe that. And I think that that's a real struggle. I mean, what do you see when you're working with teams, Jenny?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you for sharing it, to take away that veil. I wrote in a coaching session yesterday, unworthiness takes root in the self-doubt. So what happens for me and for many of my clients is you just start that little element of self-doubt. And then all of a sudden the I'm not worthy just kicks in like a beast. It comes in like a Mack truck, and you've cut yourself down, and you have no confidence in your abilities. And it happens so fast, Kendra. And I can come off an amazing experience or an amazing win, and the next day I'm back down in the dumps. And, I've worked through these tools, and the tools that I work with my clients with, it gets better. It doesn't get quite as extreme. I live with teenagers, so I'm always saying it's never as extreme as the hormones going on with the teenagers. I've learned a lot. But I think normalizing that this is still going on, doesn't matter if you're the vice president of the United States. I don't know how Kamala feels about that, but we're all going to have those self-doubts. And I also think your comment about winning is not a word that women use at all.
Nope. No, we don't. Because if you're winning, someone else is losing.
It's losing.
And women, the losers are the people that presume that they're losing in relation to you. we're our own worst enemies at a lot of times. And so we make sure that we take the other woman down. Not to worry. We're all going to get to the same level eventually, right?
Yeah, I definitely have seen that collaboration piece. It's just the way we're wired. And one of the things I'll often say to clients that I'm coaching, these are women CEOs, is we can't collaborate our way to a decision, like out of a decision. We have to actually make a decision. The collaboration and the consultation is part of our natural born process, but the clarity is our responsibility as a leader. It's a bit easier as a solopreneur, right? As you know, Kendra, you can really pretty much decide what you want. But to have that sort of, and people are looking to leaders to make clear decisions and to own those decisions, even if they end up being wrong. I think that's what leadership is making a choice and choosing it and moving forward, and to hell with the consequences, right? We're going to live with them and we'll figure it out together. That's important.
Fast no's, fast yeses, no slow maybes. Otherwise, you're not moving forward.
Oh, gosh. Say that again. That was really good. Fast say it
yeses,
again.
Fast no's, no slow maybes.
Yeah, those are death, eh?
Yeah, that's one of the big things that I know that a couple of people rolled out when I was leaving Chrysler at the time. I was taking the buyout. At that point, it was Chrysler. But it was really about making decisions and moving fast. And in marketing, if we take it back to marketing, moving fast is important. Do not worry about your hair. Do not worry if you don't like your voice. Do not worry if your eye makeup needs a little bit of touching up or something like that. At some point, you just have to move forward, and that's okay. You can move forward. It's progress, not perfection. And that's where some of that confidence comes in, that you have to believe you can do it. And it's okay if something is B+ work. Not everything has to be A+ work. You want to keep moving and delivering and making those decisions and moving it forward. As long as everybody understands that that's what you're doing and where you're going towards, they're going to be on your team.
There's something very rewarding about trying new things. And it was funny. I felt like it was a milestone. I had a colleague reach out to me and say, hey, you're doing all these wonderful LinkedIns. I'd love to learn more about how you're doing them. Would you give me like a little tutorial? And I laughed, Kendra, because I was like, well, I just started doing them 6 months ago. And when I did the first one, I didn't even know I was live. My marketing people called me and said, you do know there's like this blank black space on your LinkedIn profile. But, I had to push myself to do it. And I had to accept that I might fall. And that was okay, because that was the learning process. And honestly, now they're like a blip. I don't even think about them. And so everything that you add to your toolkit and you keep trying gets easier. But if you never step to do it, it will never get easier, and you will stay in the same place.
Marketing is about experimentation. Marketing.
Oh my God, I love that.
And I mean,
I'm writing it down.
Part science. It is not. It is not a perfect science by any stretch of anyone's imagination, including mine.
Yeah.
But it is about experimenting and trying new things.
Yeah.
And the faster you roll things out, and the faster you can get to market with different things and different messaging, that gives you a head start on your competition. Yep. That gives you ownership in people's minds for whatever service or product or nonprofit you are. You own that space in people's minds. It's a really powerful thing. So again, progressing forward, not trying to achieve perfection, is hard for a lot of us. But again, just be confident in who you are and what you can do. And if you mess up, guess what? It shows that you're human. It's totally fine, right? Or if somebody messes up for you, if you got a dog barking in the background, or the UPS guy shows up in the middle of your podcast, it happens, right?
So this would be a great place to plug your podcast, because it's such a great title, Imperfect Marketing with Kendra Corman. And you've just really speaking of personal brand, you have just spoken directly to that brand right here on this conversation. Thank you for that. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate, because I know marketing and fundraising kind of get lumped into the same bucket. Is if I spend this, what can I expect to have on the other side? So we talked about experimentation. We talked about trying things. what kind of metrics, I hate that word, but we need it, results, accountability, are you looking for when you roll out something new? How do you frame that activity / outcomes?
So the first thing that I always tell people is you have to try something for at least 90 days. Okay. So if you're going to do something, and if you're going to test LinkedIn Lives, for instance, right, Jenny? If you're going to test some LinkedIn Lives, you need to be doing them consistently for 90 days. Now, I don't mean you need to do 90 of them in 90 days. Maybe it's weekly or whatever it happens to be, but you have to have those 3 months
Right.
of history, really, I think, before you can start measuring.
Yeah.
I like to look at it starting at the 90-day mark. If you want to start earlier, you got to give it at least 30 days.
Yeah.
And then you can start looking at things. There's a lot of, I'll say, intangible metrics where, for you, Jenny, someone calls you and says, hey, I'd love to hear about how you're doing it because you're doing a great job. That's not something that comes in the first 30 days of doing it, right? So once you start doing it for a little while, you'll start to notice some of those intangibles coming in. But depending on what tactic you're using and what your goal is, I think you should set a goal with each of your tactics. So what is it going to support?
Okay.
I'm very strategic in what I do for marketing. So, if your goals are to double your donations, okay, how are we going to go about doing that? Is that corporate donations or is that personal donations?
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for personal donations, it's like, okay, let's test a direct mailer, right? And so you can test a direct mailer 3 months in a row and see what happens, or you can test email donations. Yep. And then you can start to take a look at those 90 days and see, did it increase our donations?
Mm-hmm.
Did it start to, where are people coming from? So much of digital marketing is so easy to track because you can see the click. You can see where people went. You can see where they came from, which is amazing.
Yep.
But I always recommend, don't compare yourself to other people and what they're achieving. Take a look at where you started and where you're going.
Yep.
Because so much of what we do, we compare. If you go through your Facebook or LinkedIn feed or Instagram feed, you see all these people having great times, partying it up, and you're like, I'm depressed. Like, I just ate a bag of potato chips. Why on earth are they having so much fun eating this healthy salad or whatever it happens to be? We have a tendency to compare ourselves. I recommend that when you're starting out new things, that you compare yourself to you.
Be your own benchmark, right?
Achieving. Yeah. You got to start with your own metrics. You got to start with what you're doing, because so many metrics, I would say, people aren't lying, but they might be exaggerating, right? So just because you think someone's doing well doesn't mean that they're doing well at what they're doing.
Right.
And so again, comparing it internally and how it's moving you towards your goals is really what I encourage people to do.
So if I was to paraphrase, I heard consistency. I heard do the analysis too, right? Don't just kind of throw yourself into the next activity, but just take a minute to do some kind of analysis. And then maybe it's tweak or redirect as the third step, eh?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, you get a chance to say pet peeve for clients. They hire you for marketing, I assume. Tell me more about the things that make you most frustrated. And I mean that in a love way, Kendra, not to complain about your clients, but some of the pitfalls people fall into when they hire marketing support. Tell me more.
So a couple different things. So I'd say my biggest pet peeve is people not listening to me. And luckily I've been doing this long enough. I've been 9 years on my own. Headed into my 10th year coming up here. And when you're doing marketing and you're hiring an expert, you need to listen to them. And you need to listen to them for a while. Because if you stop listening to me and you start listening to all of these other voices, we're not going to be consistent.
Right.
I've got a couple of clients that I'm getting 7 to 10 different projects from them every week. And I'm like, okay, which of your 3 goals is this supporting?
Right.
They're creating a lot of things that aren't going to move their organization forward. And it's frustrating to me because we're not focused. and not focusing and not creating a direction. They were very upfront with what their goals were, and I'm trying to deliver to that. And then they're like, oh, but what about this over here? And what about that over there? Marketing is not about the shiny objects. Marketing is about consistency. We'll go back to that. You have to be consistent. And we can't do the other things to evolve their marketing and their tactics unless we're consistent in a few things first, and then we build on them. But if we're like, our social media is boring and we need a new website and I need a flyer for this and I need a flyer for that. No, you really don't. You really don't need a flyer for all those things. Trust me.
And you end up in tactics, right? And there's no core messages. There's no goals, to your point. There's no, what does this support, Kendra? It starts to look like spaghetti or chasing the event or the activity around the table.
Yeah. And so what happens is they end up wasting their time with me. So I have a limited number of hours. I don't micromanage my clients to hours. I try and do everything that I can to help them achieve their goals. So I don't usually say, oh no, sorry, that's out of scope. We're going to do what we can do. But there's only so many hours in the day. And so if you're sending me 7 to 10 requests in a week, I can't move everything else forward that we've been talking about because there's no other time for that. And so you really want to pick what you want to achieve, your goals, and then you want to be consistent in them. Now, I'm not saying you can't reevaluate and tweak and things like that, but you need to talk about it. You need to have a strategy behind it. You need to have those goals and talk about, okay, this that we're doing isn't achieving our goals. Why isn't it working? Should we be doing something different? And get the opinion of the expert. Now, I know a lot of people have been burned by coaches and consultants and things like that in the past, and so it's hard to trust. And I don't know about you, but everybody I run into is a marketing expert because they are able to watch commercials. And so it's a dangerous place to be. But you want to hire someone, again, that you know, like, and trust, and then trust them to help you. Right. Trust them to guide you. You're hiring them for their expertise. Talk it through. If you're questioning something, talk it through with them. Just flat out say, hey, can we talk about something difficult? Ask them if it's okay, and then start the conversation. Because if you start directing me in 17 different directions, I'm not achieving anything for you. And that's not good.
No, I think about how, I think about my clients and I think about my CEOs that I work with. I also think hiring an expert is an opportunity for you to learn. And so taking the time to ask you questions about marketing and understand why the choices are made adds to your toolkit. When I first started out in fundraising, I think I undervalued communications and marketing. And the more I spent in this world, nothing happens in fundraising without marketing and communications. There's no spark, there's no action, there's no activity. And getting that messaging right, it feels sometimes like a slow down to hurry up. You really have to slow down to get clear about what the goals are. Slow down to figure out what it is you're trying to achieve. Slow down to get the key messages right. Get the internal team speaking the same language before you can actually go external. It does not, to your point, start with a brochure. That's backwards.
Yes, exactly. And what you're talking about with fundraising and fund development, it's so key to have those messages. And again, to slow down and be on the same page. Yep. Yes, you can ask people for things, I think it's 19 times a year or something crazy before they get annoyed with you.
Yep.
But you want to be asking for similar things all around, and you want to balance those communications. If you've got a gala coming up and you've got a direct mail you want to time those communications.
Yeah. That calendar piece. So unsexy, right, Kendra?
It is, but it is probably one of the most powerful tools that you can have. I use Asana when I have my VIP days with my clients where we build their marketing strategy and calendar. I actually have desk calendars that I pull out and I pull out a pencil and we start writing in what we're going to be doing each day and what's going to be delivering and when it's going to happen. Because if you don't have that calendar and that outline, things fall to the wayside.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I mean, my business, just for interest sake, I sort of think 3 months and then 6 months and then the rest of the year. So I hope to get to a place where I'm speaking 6 months, 9 months, and the rest of the year. But at the moment it's 3, 6, and then the rest. So I have a good handle on the first 6 months of the year, and I have some concepts and some brainstorming about the far end of the year. I find as a business owner, and I'm sure this is for my clients as well, the biggest challenge is keeping a handle on the day-to-day while also keeping an eye on the future. That leadership core is what will happen in the future. I've been trying to block time with myself to think about that, or get teams to have some strategy meetings and then some tactic meetings. I think we need both. We need, how are we going to do it? But we also need like big picture meetings, and balancing the two is in one of my secret sauces with my team here at Chavender, at least.
Yes, I love that. So I'm a big fan. I have a full focus planner. That's my big, huge, like, thing, and it works in 12 months. It works or 12 weeks. It works quarterly, and it allows me to focus on the goals for that quarter.
Yeah.
And because you can't look at a whole year. If you, yes, you can set annual goals, and yes, you can, but you can't look at a whole year at a time. And so looking in those 12-week increments is a really big help for me.
Yeah.
And then I have time on my calendar to work on my business.
Good for you.
And it literally says work on KendraCorman.com or KendraCorman.com planning session or whatever that happens to be. And I make sure that I take 2 to 4 hours a week out of my day just to work on thinking, looking at where I'm at, looking to what's next, looking to see, okay, is there anything else I should be doing to help me achieve this quarter's goals? Yeah. And it's very, very powerful to do that. I'm a huge fan and agree with you. And finding that time, a lot of us, again, women in executive roles and things like that, I've heard people judge what's on their calendar. And so you don't call it thinking time. Don't call it email time.
Sure.
Call it strategic next actions. Call it
whatever you need.
Call it planning session. Call it whatever it is that you want to call it. Yeah. But it's going to be really important for you to put something on your calendar and then name it what it really and truly is.
Yeah.
Strategic next action, planning session. Give yourself that thinking time. I had 2 hours of thinking time yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 hours of thinking time next week.
Right.
And so I try to really block that off so that I can work on what I need to work on. Because you can't write when you're tired. You can't create strategy. You can't innovate if you're tired. And you definitely can't innovate and create strategies and new ideas and really think through where you're at in a half-hour break in between meetings.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. If we want to tend to our personal brand as a leader, we need to commit time to what that vision looks like, to casting that future state that does not yet exist. And I agree with you. I'm a big journaler now. I never did before. Whether it's sitting quietly away from the computer, this is not a luxury. For those of you listening that are like rolling your eyes at this point, like how the hell could I possibly add that in? It makes everything else easier because just to our point earlier, once you know where you're going and what's most important, your calendar and your activities automatically shift to align with that. And you really are robbing yourself of your grounding if you're not taking that time. For us, it's in our business. For those of you listening as leaders, it might be to think about your senior leadership team. Who can we elevate? Who needs a little nudge? Where are we at against corporate goals? Are we serving our mission? Is there places we're falling down? That does not happen in front of a computer.
No, it doesn't. And, with a lot of people working remote, to a point, it does happen a little bit in front of a computer, but you have to really think and find that time. One thing that really resonated with me earlier this year is, I should say late last year, someone was telling me that they heard someone say, schedule your priorities, don't prioritize your schedule. And it's taken me, I don't want to say how many years, I think 20 years, to admit that having a full schedule does not mean I'm more important.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, as we close out here, a couple things. Tell us more about your podcast and how people can find you.
Oh, yes. So Imperfect Marketing is a podcast. I have 2 episodes a week. Every Tuesday, we release an Imperfect Marketing brief, which is just me giving some information on trends, highlights, things like that. It's 15 minutes or less, usually about 5 minutes or less. And then every Thursday, I have a interview episode where I talk to somebody about marketing or mindset or whatever it happens to be that's going to help move your organization forward and just hopefully give you a different perspective on what it is. And the show is called Imperfect Marketing. You can find it at imperfectmarketing.kendracorman.com and
Awesome.
or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're on
Sounds
Apple
great.
and all that fun stuff.
And I'll put them in the show notes too. And KendraCorman.com is your website?
KendraCorman.com is my website. One of the things is, from a marketing standpoint, that I do believe everybody should be doing is email marketing. And I'm a big passionate person about that. So if you're looking to grow your email list, I have a freebie at kendracorman.com/1000. And you can grab that 7 steps to reaching your first 1,000 subscribers. Hopefully that'll help give you guys a different way to think about growing your email list.
Love that. And email is so important because it continues the relationship with the people who have self-identified, right?
It builds the relationship. It creates that know, like, and trust factor because you're consistent.
Yeah.
And it is a great way to continue that personalized contact because it's personal and personalized.
Love it. Any final messages for our Underdog listeners as they go through their journey? Any final thoughts you'd like to share with them, Kendra?
I think the biggest thing is that be confident in yourself. Do not try to go out and prove yourself at every turn because that only undermines your what you have to offer. But again, if you go ahead and just know that you are in where you're at for a reason. Somebody believed in you, so you should believe in yourself.
Great words to live by. Great words to live by. Well, listen, Kendra, this has been a great conversation. I mean, we've talked about personal branding. We've talked about marketing as a relationship tool, which of course I'm all over. We've talked a lot about consistency too. And so with that, this closes out season 2 of the Underdog Leadership Podcast, which is kind of mind blowing because again, July last year was the first time I started a podcast and I have grown and I have learned. It has gotten easier. So maybe the final thought for all of you listening is try something new, see what happens, explore. Don't stay hidden in your old underdog stories if they're not serving you anymore. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And thanks again, Kendra.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.